In 3, 2, 1. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Circle Up and Get Real, where you know that we talk about things that matter with people who matter. And today, my guest is Dr. Chloe Banales, and Chloe is someone I met in San Diego at NLP Train the Trainer training. And Chloe, we didn't get a chance to talk as much in person, but there was just something about you that was very magnetic to me. And I remember talking to you and saying, I need you on my podcast. Would you be willing to do that? And so here we are. So thank you for being with me.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So Chloe, if you're not watching the video, because we do this on video and then we put the audio up on the podcast, you can't see who Chloe is. And she's a beautiful Chinese, Mexican, Korean person who I'm saying that only because all of your ethnicity, Chloe, kind of is a really great indication of who you are as is anyone's, but I love what you do for a living. Chloe is a former athlete, which I told her earlier was nobody's a former athlete, once an athlete, always an athlete. She has years of clinical experience focused on how our mental and emotional health manifests through our physical body and vice versa. Dr. Chloe's work is dedicated to helping clients connect the strength of their mind to the wisdom of their body so that they can finally reprogram unconscious habits like I'm not good enough and embody their next level of physical and mental performance. Now, if that's not compelling, I don't know what will be. So Chloe, I'm so excited to hear more about you and to tell our audience what it means to you to be real. How did you get here, Chloe? How did you get to this place you are now as a doctor of medicine and doing all the things you're doing?
Yeah, thank you so much for that very kind introduction. And I will say there are many ways to tell that story of how I got to be here. And similar to maybe other guests on this podcast or maybe other physicians as well, many times the story of how we got here is derived from a personal experience. So, growing up as an athlete, growing up in a family where I would say I was raised to be very goal oriented, whether it was like, okay, this kind of grades is what is the goal. Okay, we're going to get those grades. Okay, after we get those grades, we're going to go to college. It wasn't even a question. And then after college, that's where it was like, you get to kind of live the question. And for me, that was a little bit terrifying. It was a little bit anxiety producing, where I would actually break down at the end of every semester leading up to graduation. This was for my undergrad at San Diego State, because I was like, what do I do? Everyone around me knows what they want to do. This was my perception. They know what they're doing. They know where they're going. I have no idea. Why did I choose kinesiology as a major? It's so broad. All I know is that I liked sports. What do I do? So this led to me graduating. And then about a year after graduating, when I was kind of experimenting with the road of being a physical therapist, I was like, okay, this is in alignment with what I think my values are, what I want to do, who I want to work with. However, I had what I describe as a physical, mental, and emotional breakdown. This looked like a anxiety attack where my body completely shut down. What I didn't know at the time, hindsight 2020, is that I was so driven by what I thought I was supposed to do. Go to PT school, growing up in a family where it's like, what med school are you going to go to? That kind of idea. It was like, okay, I'll be a physical therapist. I'll satisfy being a doctor in my own ways, not the traditional internal medicine doctor. I'll do it in my own way. But it wasn't really what was going to light me up. And I didn't know it at the time. I also was trying to do all the things. I was coaching a JV girls lacrosse team at the time. Having started the girls lacrosse program at my high school, there was a big part of that attachment. And I loved seeing the girls fall in love with the sport that I loved as well. And so I was trying to do all the things, trying to only sleep 2 hours a night. And
on purpose?
On purpose.
Oh my
So,
God.
I don't know if you know this, Jody, and it's something I remind everyone is that we could go longer without eating or drinking than we can without sleep. Sleep has foundational. I
Mm.
found this out the hard way. So essentially, the anxiety attack was a result of neglecting my physical body, my mental and emotional bodies. And that landed me in the hospital with a ticket to my first psychiatry appointment. They were like, hey, we think you might be depressed.
Mm.
And then my first session, it was like, da, 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 you meet all the criteria. Here's our recommendation. And I know that I was intuitive at the time because it didn't really feel like the right thing to do. And I also was desperate to find a solution now that I had a problem. I had a label for the problem. So I was like, okay, I'll try this out. And I'm very thankful for that time because it helped my body sleep again. And then once I was able to sleep again, I kind of found my way back to myself. And then once I found my way back to myself, I noticed how much different that version of me was compared to the other version of me. So I
Mm.
started to actually not want to participate in sports or working out. I started to not want to hang out with my friends. I was sleeping better, not sleeping only 2 hours a night. However, I didn't feel like myself. And that's how I found my first acupuncturist.
Mm.
And I was amazed. Have you had acupuncture before, Jody?
No, I haven't
Oh,
done puncture. I know. I'm going to after this. I promise.
awesome. Awesome. So I hadn't had acupuncture up until this point either. So I didn't know what to expect. And I was actually really adverse to things like the flu shot and different things like that in the past. So I was like, I don't know if this will work. And immediately on the table, I actually fell asleep in the deepest, most restful sleep it felt like a 4 hour nap, but it was actually just an hour. And I was like, what just happened? So I went back twice a week for about 2 or 3 months. And then all of a sudden, it was like this fog lifted.
Mm.
And then I started to talk to the acupuncturist. I was like, what's happening? What are you doing? And also by the end of those 3 months, I was like, how can I do what you're doing? I know I want to help people. I love how you keep talking about how there's no separation between the mind and body because I know that at some level, but the way that you're saying it actually makes more sense more time I hear it. And so this seed was planted. And
Uh-huh.
during that time, I was actually able to wean off the medication as well. And so he shared a really cool thing that I'll always remember where he said, you would be great. You would be a great acupuncturist. And school is not easy. It's not an easy path.
Mm.
Try it out. And if you love it, stick with it.
Mm.
So I tried out a semester. And then 6 years later, ended up getting my doctorate and my master's degree in it with
Wow.
a big, big passion for supporting mental health, things like anxiety, things like depression, where we get to approach each person as they are versus just the symptom or the diagnosis.
Mm.
Because in Chinese medicine, it really is a matter of pattern differentiation versus just the diagnosis or any kind of labels.
Mhm.
We're looking at who the person is, their constitution, so the way that they might be acting, behaving, or more symptoms they might be prone to just based on their upbringing and their nature. And the way that one person presents with anxiety might be a different way for another person. Some people, for example, they tend to crave more foods. Some people tend to not crave foods or their coping mechanisms might be different. And of course, like as a master practitioner, the greater problem is going to be individual to each person. So considering the Chinese medicine aspect and the NLP aspect, it really weaves in together as far as being able to approach each person and support them where they are for who they are in that moment.
So NLP, I want to just let you know, I'm not a master practitioner
Oh,
yet. I was one of the 2 or 3 people who came in without
yeah.
that. I only have practitioner training, but I'm really fascinated by NLP master practitioner processes from being around it. And I have been talking to a couple of my guests that I also met at the same training I met you about some of the specifics of NLP. And I'd like to ask you some of the same questions. You mentioned acupuncture because of your personal experience with that as it related to your inability to sleep or your choice not to sleep for
Yeah,
more than a couple hours. So for you, the experience of acupuncture creating the opportunity for you to sleep caused you to take a look and say, this is really important to me. How did you get involved with NLP?
totally. So it was kind of a similar experience. I was actually in my second to last semester of my master's program for the Chinese medicine and the master's in Chinese medicine program. And I remember sitting in the first day of practitioner training with Dr. Matt on stage, and everything he was talking about was exactly what I was so passionate about. And some of the things I was already implementing, things like modeling, having grown up, like we mentioned, in a really goal oriented family. And I stumbled upon this specific training in NLP because I was seeking to learn more about improving my communication and also how to be more successful. It's something that when I think about what are the stories or what was the kind of drive, what was the motivation when I was younger that still is present with me today. And it's the drive to learn how successful people are successful in what they do. And if NLP really has been founded upon modeling and modeling being related to how is one person creating success in a way that we could break that formula down so we could teach it, well, learn it ourselves and then teach others and then teach those people to teach others, that would be the basis there. So my motivation was like, okay, NLP, if everything revolves around communication, even in Chinese medicine, this is really cool, where it's a matter of the relationships between different organ systems. What's the most important thing about relationships? Communication.
Mhm.
So, how can we support the different organ systems to communicate more effectively so that harmony is restored, chi is restored, etc.? So, when it comes to NLP, I was like, duh, this is perfect. I was already in the Tony Robbins world, listening to the YouTube videos, all that kind of things. And so it made sense to go to this training. And I was skeptical at first because you know this, having gone to the practitioner training, and I was like, "Wait, why is it $200?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense."
Yeah.
However, because of the person who referred me to this specific training and trusting her,
Mhm.
I decided to give it a try, kind of like acupuncture school. And then day 1, I was like, "Oh my goodness, I need to go to master prac." And by day 4, I knew that I was going to one day go to trainer's training because I have a goal and am completing or in progress of bringing NLP into more the healthcare field.
Mhm.
Because something that me and my partner discussed, he's actually in acupuncture school right now. And semester 2, they actually put you in clinic so that you get to see real case studies semester 2. And this is out of 13 semesters.
Wow.
And so he's even seen, he's done practitioner training, how valuable it would be to be able to listen better, to ask better questions, and even utilizing skills like rapport building
Mhm.
so that your patients feel more comfortable to actually share what's going on. Because I don't know about you, I've even had experiences where there wasn't a lot of rapport with the practitioner in front of me. So I actually didn't feel comfortable enough to share everything that was going on because I wasn't sure if they were even really listening to what I was saying.
Mhm.
So that's where that drive and where NLP found me and I found NLP.
That's so interesting. I love that you said it's about communication, what got you at first, because they do tell us that there's an NLP communication model, and that's kind of what it is. And were you doing NLP at the same time you were doing your doctor program?
So not
Chinese medicine?
exactly. Funny enough, because I took the prac training and it was like my second to last semester in my master's program.
Okay.
I almost dropped out entirely in the master's program. I remember going home and I called my parents. I was like, I know what I want to do. I'm going to be going into NLP. This is what I've been looking for. Like, I'm going to drop out of school. They're like, wait, no, wait, let's talk. You only have one more semester left.
Yeah.
All you have to do is get your license and you could do whatever you want. Just get your license and then do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And me being a little bit more hard-headed, I was like, well, I don't know. I'll see. I'll see. And thank goodness I did have a great mentor in school. And he was a little bit more of a rebel too.
Okay.
And he was someone who I was interning under for my last semester. And I would talk to him about maybe a test and like, oh my gosh, on the test, I wrote this answer because I know it's the right answer according to the books.
Mm,
However, I know in real life this is the right answer. And I'm so frustrated. He's like, get your license and do whatever you want afterwards.
mhm,
Was like, okay, okay. So I decided to put off master practitioner training, which is something I really, really wanted to do because I'd be able to learn something called mental emotional release, which has been clinically proven to release negative emotions and limiting beliefs. I was like, whoa, where was this when I was moving through clinical depression?
mhm.
And so on my last day of my master's program, I was like, okay, cool. I'll be able to do master prep because I wanted to go back to back 2 weeks in a row or 2 weeks in a row. Yeah. And on the last day of my master's program, I decided to enroll in the doctorate program.
Oh my goodness.
So I knew that having those two letters in front of my name and doing additional research on that mind body connection would open the doors in ways that I didn't see yet. So
Mhm.
I decided to prolong master practitioner for another 2 years. And that would make it 4 years since my first prac training until I did master prac.
Okay.
And then I was all in. I actually couldn't wait one more month because I live in San Diego and they have a San Diego training
Right.
and they also have a Tampa, Florida training a month earlier. And
Mhm.
I couldn't wait one more month. So I did the Tampa training last year, 2021, and went all in and immediately started integrating that into the work I do with clients with phenomenal results because I'm very grateful that the clients I work with, they already are in the world of like, yeah, I know my emotions manifest physically. I'm just not sure how to support my mental and emotional bodies to then therefore support my physical body.
Yeah.
Cool. I have additional tools for that now. So
Right. I love that. So could you tell us just a little bit more about master practitioner and some of the things you mentioned, mental and emotional release? These are techniques that people can use or have used with them to, like you said, get rid of mental and emotional blockages. What other techniques did you learn that are also helpful in your work?
absolutely. So, master practitioner training, it's a total of 14 days, so about 2 weeks. We have a day in between and 1 day break. And so, we are learning a lot of tools related to language patterns. So, this would be like quantum linguistics, which is a really fancy way of basically describing that we're using our language to help someone change their perception of what might be a quote unquote problem.
Hmm.
Because once we shift our perception on what we believe is a problem, then we open ourselves to new possibilities. And what's really, really cool from a physiological perspective is that anytime we literally open up our vision, just like with something like Hakalau, which is something that you know, Jody, is that when we open our vision physically, this opens our vision also mentally as well. There's actually a lot of research that is done by Dr. David Hawkins. He's someone I quoted a ton in my research papers who was able to gather evidence showing how the instantaneous response of thinking a negative thought or feeling a negative feeling has an instantaneous result of decreasing our muscle strength by 50%, 50%.
Mhm.
And so it's that difference of a thought because what happens is we think this thought in our unconscious mind, our body creates a picture and then the body responds to the picture. And in that case of the negative thought, whether it's like, I used to have this tendency if I was going, I love powerlifting, for example. If I was going for a heavy lift and I would feel a little bit of doubt, I would feel that sense of weakness versus I know that tangible difference of like, I fucking got this. And going up to the bar and I feel strong during, after, and it's because of that mental state that I decided to focus on. So,
So there, you mentioned earlier that there's a connection between the body and the mind.
Absolutely.
And so if people understand this, and I'm not a clinical person, I'm not a doctor, but everything you've said as it relates to business and the things that I've been doing as a life purpose and career coach, I hope you people who are listening are hearing the connection here. We human beings are human beings, whether we are athletes or whether we are stay-at-home parents or whether we are, whatever we are doing, because it's not the doing
Mhm.
that's important. It's the being who does the doing. And what I hear, Dr. Chloe, is that you're talking about the being. You're talking about getting in touch with some of those things that prevent us from being our best.
Absolutely. So well said. Something that I will often remind my clients and community is that it's not so much what you do that is healing you.
Mm,
It's who you are becoming, who you are choosing to be.
mhm,
Because everything you do has an energetic signature, is the way that I like to describe it, has an energetic signature that then therefore imprints on the results or the actions that you will have as a result of who you are being and doing. So, an example of that would be if someone is going to start a new protocol from their practitioner. This might look like a supplement protocol, it might look like a lifestyle protocol, and who they are being while they decide to start that is like, oh, I don't know if this is going to work. Nothing works for me. I'm just not someone that things work for. So
mm.
when they do the actual activities, everything has that energetic signature on that. And so, what do you think their results are going to look like? They're only going to prove the story that they're telling themselves about who they are. Does that make sense?
So totally. And I wonder, how does what you're learning in Chinese medicine interact or not with Western medicine? Because it feels like they're almost sometimes in a fight with each other.
It can be. So it depends on who you talk to.
Mm,
Something that I really appreciate is how there's a time and place for everything. There's a time and place for everything. And with the direction that we're going into, what I really see happening, especially with social media and podcasts and YouTube being ever so much more so the go to,
mhm.
is
Yeah.
that we are really moving in a way, moving towards, I would say, a movement or a world where the power is really going back into the patient's hands, into
Mm,
the client's hands, where I do believe it should be. Doctor is supposed to be teacher.
mm,
And even from the Chinese medicine physician's oath, that first stanza, I love it so much. The first stanza talks about the way of the physician is to live in harmony with nature and to teach their patients to do the same.
mm.
So, emphasizing the responsibility for the physician to do their part, and then for the physician to teach their patients to live in their own harmony with their nature. So, for my perspective, when it comes to Chinese medicine, when it comes to Western medicine, whatever it might be, my hope is that whatever medicine is most resonating for you and what your goals are in that moment is that it brings you back to you. It harmonizes the nature around you and within you. Because truly, yeah, it's a little bit esoteric and it is really real where we are not separate from nature. So we are a part of nature. So we learn to live with our own rhythms, we learn more about ourselves, we're able to better attune to what is and isn't quote unquote right or what does or doesn't resonate for us. And then therefore we're able to choose our practitioners, choose our protocols, we choose what we do for work, what we don't do for work, how we rest, how we play, who we choose to hang out with, all that kind of stuff. So really that's where I look forward to the harmony of all different types of medicines kind of coming into a really cool partnership. Like, hey, I'm talking to this patient right now, and they really need to talk to an OBG right now to get an exam for this and this and this. And then when they do that, I would love for them to come back to me to talk about some lifestyle shifts. Maybe we could talk about some herbs or this or that. Does that make sense?
Oh, completely. As you're describing that, I'm just seeing in my mind's eye this, I'll call it utopia, but this place where we all live, where we do coexist at our highest and best. instead of being right about the things that don't work. Because if it's fear that keeps people from trying something new, because what if I have to admit that I was wrong about something? Sometimes obviously that doesn't serve anyone, to hold on to a limiting belief. And I know from my experience with NLP, it's all about uncovering those limiting beliefs so that we have more choices. And in your experience, you live in California, I live in North Dakota. California is the place where, all the hippies live and all this stuff makes sense. Where I live, it's not as popular, but there are those places where you can have these kinds of conversations. What are you seeing around you with people who are being more accountable to their own lives and not only just physical health, but mental and emotional health as well? Are you seeing the results of your work in the people you're working with?
Yeah, that's a I light up when I think about this because I do see a lot of progress happening. I do see the ripple effect happening because of, I would say there is a gift when it comes to social media and having more interconnectedness, no matter where someone is located. I just had a call with a new client who's in London. And sure, there's a little bit of a time difference. And what's really cool is that we're able to connect in real time. And I can really hear what his goals are. And sure, he might have different surroundings around him. And then I also know that that's going to impact his goals. With
Mm.
the clients that I've worked with, many of them have, interestingly enough, been more on East Coast time. So whether it's Connecticut or Florida, there were actually, I think, two Connecticut people at one point that I'm seeing them get more and more connected to the fact that when they choose themselves, everything gets to be a little bit easier. And by a
Mm.
little bit, I do mean a lot. As it's giving themselves that permission to really put themselves first, knowing that's part of, even on Tuesday, one of them used an analogy of, it's putting my oxygen mask on first.
Mm.
And it's remembering to do that because I know that if I want to be the mentor that I'm meant to be, I need to make sure that I'm taken care of, which definitely is helpful and definitely so needed
Yeah.
because there is that aspect of self care. And then what is also important to give voice to is the importance of community care too, where healing accelerates, healing really does occur in community
Mm.
because of the way that we can co-regulate with each other. I could do all the journaling, I could do all the meditating, all the MER, all the NLP, and until I go out and interact with the world around me, do I get to really see the results of the work that I've been doing for myself? And
Mhm.
then, sure, for others, and really for myself so that I can be better with others.
Yeah, that's a great reminder. So anybody who does anything, getting back to the do versus the who, I always like to say I'm more interested in the who
Yeah.
than the do, because people know how to do their thing, whatever they do. They're a carpenter, they're a physician, whatever. The doing is a skill that they can develop. But the being, it sounds to me, is something that you focus on in your work, and you can do that remotely.
Big time. Big time.
How does that work?
So I'll speak in my experience with how I like to work with clients. And a lot of it is through holding space for them to be able to talk through what's present for them. And then really kind of asking the specific questions to allow them to reflect on, oh, is this who I want to be in relationship to the results that I want to see, kind of idea. So it's utilizing the tools of NLP to listen and ask better questions that would cause someone to see different possibilities and therefore shift their perspective and then shift their experience of life. So it's through these questions that really, really do help. Another tool is also human design. Have you heard of human design
Yes.
before?
Mhm.
Cool. So human design is the science of differentiation. So it was similar to Chinese medicine, very bio individual. And the neat thing about this, it's helped myself so much. And even recently with a couple of my most recent clients, being able to reflect back to them some things that are so natural to them that they're not even consciously aware of it, was really eye-opening, quite literally, for them, so
Mhm.
that they could improve their confidence in that area that it was just innate. They're like,
Mm,
"Oh, I do that." Therefore, helping them to own more of their space in a way that is conscious and take action in a way that feels really congruent, grounded, and aligned. So,
mm,
reflecting back to them aspects that I might notice based on their chart, aspects that I might notice as a coach, having that third party perspective. And so that then they're doing the change work, they're doing the work. I,
mhm.
as a coach, get to reflect back to them, hey, so this is what you want. Is this who you need to be in order to get what you want? That kind of idea.
That's so great. So when you're doing remote work or virtual work or however one want to say this, I'm making an assumption that when you see people in person, you can do more things. You can do more. I mean, acupuncture is kind of hard to do remotely, isn't it?
Still haven't figured out how to do acupuncture over Zoom.
So there are certain things that you need to be in person with. You said esoteric acupuncture. On your sheet here, it says, I'm wondering if there's anything else that you need to do in person. I'm
So
looking at,
acupuncture and the fire cupping would be the
oh,
in-person.
fire. Sure, sure.
Yeah, the fire cupping's really fun. I like to say I get to play with fire, you get to feel good.
So if you don't know what that is, everybody, there, Chloe has a picture on her website. Or I'm just going to speak from my perspective here in North Dakota. I am the scorekeeper for the North Dakota State basketball teams,
Awesome.
men and women, and you'll see these round circles on their shoulders, or and they look like bruises almost. And that's what Dr. Chloe's talking about with this cupping. And could you talk a little bit more about how that releases? I know a little bit, but could you talk about what that does?
Totally. So cupping is a phenomenal therapy. What it does is it creates space between the fascia, the skin, and the muscle to promote and improve circulation of blood and lymph. So your lymphatic system is kind of like your sewage system. It's cleaning out toxins, helping you to excrete it through the body. Your blood circulation is also really important because that's what's oxygenating the rest of your body. So if you're upregulating that, if you're promoting the circulation of that, you're going to, as an athlete, for example, improve recovery time, decrease soreness. And then from the mental and emotional aspect as well, if you can imagine creating space to allow things to flow more easily for those who might be feeling stuck, there's going to be somewhere in the body that is also stuck. So as we continue to work body and mind and body, you're going to have benefits on both aspects.
Mm.
So there's the physical, mental, emotional, even those energetic aspects that are really, really great with cupping.
Man, you do a lot. Holy moly. When you think, I mean, think about what's missing, Chloe. There's nothing missing. You've got it all, it seems. Western medicine, maybe because you work with other people, Eastern medicine, acupuncture, mental emotional release, NLP. You've got it all.
I appreciate that reflection. And I am a student for life, of life. And what I have learned to trust is that passion, the little fire, the little zing, as far as like, let's look into that a little bit more.
Mm,
Let's dive into that a little bit more. Because it's been a matter of going from the version of myself that's like, what am I going to do with my life to really feeling so good, so congruent, so excited about what I'm doing now and what will happen. What made the biggest difference was allowing myself to create clarity instead of waiting for clarity.
mm,
And what creating clarity looked like for me was allowing myself to really open up to the people around me, something that was interesting to think about as I move forward in NLP. And why I love it so much, especially the communication aspect, was when I think back to the times when anxiety used to be a part of my of my daily experience. I would even at one point break down in tears when it was really bad if I had to make a decision
mm,
about where I wanted to go for dinner 2 hours later. It was
mhm,
just so stressful that I would break down in tears. And now, what feels so good to say is that because I'm better able to communicate my desires, how I'm feeling, and also hear others for what they're saying versus making assumptions on the wrong things, phenomenal difference.
mm.
So, I imagine if I had the tools of NLP, maybe even a little bit earlier, I could have communicated more about what was happening inside. So maybe my story would have been a little bit different. And of course, I'm very, very grateful. It's exactly what it was to get me exactly where I am.
Yeah, that's a great reminder. I'm thinking back to my prac training, and the instructor were talking about their kids and talking about Dr. Matt talks about raising his children in this modality because Dr. Matt's dad raised him in this modality. So I don't know if there's an age limit on NLP in your experience. Can you be too young, do you think?
That's a great question. It's from what I'm remembering, I'm hearing like Dr. Matt's voice in my head. It's a matter of the student is ready. It's a
Mhm.
matter of the student is ready. Having assisted for multiple prac trainings, it's been so fun to see some of the quote unquote kids. I feel like they aren't really kids at like 16 anymore. They grasp a lot of the concepts even more easy because of not having any preconceptions about whether or not it's possible or not to have this change happen so fast.
Sure.
Sometimes, for example, a lot of the work that I do with my clients is supporting them in opening up their beliefs and feeling safer around the idea that they can experience joy more frequently and for longer periods of time. It's okay for them to choose themselves. It's okay for life to be going good. They don't have to wait until things hit the fan for them to make changes. They don't have to wait until burnout to finally take care of their body. So, how can they get ahead of the curve and also just allow themselves to be more who they are, own their voice, own their desires, and go for what they want truly instead of what everyone else says that they should want kind of idea. So, age limit, not so much a limit, it's just a matter, like most things, is the student ready?
That's great. So, if you've heard anything that attracts you, if you're listening to this podcast, and you want to get a hold of Dr. Chloe, I am betting she would be wide open to having that conversation. So, how can people find you? What's the easiest way to find you, Dr. Chloe?
Totally. I love chatting with people. And the best way to get in touch would be I'm actually active on Instagram.
Okay.
I also have my website that people could send a message to as well. And Instagram, I have a lot of fun on stories. I'm active in my community. We're actually going to be starting a book club this next month. So I'm excited about that. I know you do your book clubs. So there's a really fun community aspect there. So I'm on Instagram, Dr.Chloe Hom, Dr.CHLOEHOM,
Mhm.
and send a message, screenshot you listening to this conversation, the insights that you got, and I'm sure both of us would love to see it.
That's awesome. I love that. Also, what I was going to ask you about NLP. Please tell me a little bit about the Quit Smoking in 60 Minutes. Did you complete that as well?
I did. I
So tell us
did.
about that.
It's phenomenal. It's something I'm so passionate about as a physician because of the efficacy rate. So, in acupuncture school, we actually learn a specific protocol that's approved by many states to be recommended for addicts who are attempting to release the habits of cigarette smoking or any other addictions, or most other addictions, I should say. And so with that protocol, it's called the NADA protocol, NADA. And
Okay.
usually it takes anywhere from 7 to 10 sessions, which if that's one session a week, it could be quite a few weeks.
It's
With
not that many when you think about people who have smoked for years, though.
this is true. And with the QS 60 sessions, this has an efficacy rate of 95% success rate with one session. So when I heard this, I was like, wow, this is phenomenal because this is a success rate that has the clinical evidence for it. There's actually a study from the University of Washington showing that hypnosis is the most effective way to support this smoking cessation, and they had a 90% success rate. So the cool thing about what knocked this success rate up a few more percentage points is that this specific modality is customized to every individual. So we get into it with like, okay, what are your specific triggers? What benefits might you miss? And like really, why at the core of your why is this a motivation for you so that the hypnosis can actually be totally customized to that person so that after one session they can become a non-smoker. And if for whatever reason someone doesn't resonate with the therapy, it doesn't work for them, then something that all the graduates, as far as I know, everyone who I've talked to, we do stand by a money back guarantee. So it's like, hey, you really have so much to gain and nothing to lose because this is so effective. And what's been emphasized time and time again by Dr. Matt James and some of the other practitioners who have been doing this specific therapy for over a decade now is that the people that this therapy doesn't work for, they actually discovered that their motivation was extrinsic. So what that
Uh,
means, it's the difference between my girlfriend wants me to stop smoking, so I'm going to do this therapy versus I really want to be the best father that I can be. And that's why I want to stop smoking. And it's a bonus that I have people around me who are supporting me in this change.
That's awesome. That's just awesome. So I'm making an assumption here that if anybody is more committed to their limitations than their possibilities, there really would be no reason to contact Dr. Chloe or me or do any work like this. And if there's any little sliver that you're thinking, I've tried everything there is to try, this might be my last hope, that would be a great time to call Dr. Chloe. And if you're just interested in being more effective, getting rid of any of that anxiety that you might have, even if it's not debilitating, up leveling maybe your life, it would be a great time for you to call Dr. Chloe. Is that an assumption that is fair to make?
Very fair assumption.
So thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to share that I haven't asked?
The last thing that comes to mind is I so appreciate this conversation, Jody. You are a phenomenal interviewer. And I hope that this conversation or these conversations today really did highlight how much power each person has to truly experience the life that they desire, no matter what kind of physical, mental, or emotional obstacle they might be facing. It might be a door that just might be closed, and all you have to do is actually go up to it and open it.
Mm.
We are so much more powerful than we know. And I hope that this conversation was a big reminder of
It was for me. So, selfishly, I'm grateful to have
that.
had this conversation with you. Thank you so much for taking the time, Dr. Chloe. I look forward to continuing our connection and following each other's work because it's a big world. And there are quite a few of us who are up to empowering the planet. I have my Empowerment Inc. hanging right here.
I love that.
Empower the Planet is Empowerment Inc.'s motto and mission, and we are part of that. So thank you for being with me today.
Thank you so much for allowing me to contribute to this. Grateful to
Absolutely.
be here.
Absolutely. And as always, everybody, go get real. See you again soon. Bye-bye.